Hey everybody, I want to give a huge shout out to lensprotogo.com. They are sponsoring this lens review and we wouldn't have it without their support. They've given us a coupon code, Maven10. If you use that at checkout, you will save 10% on your next lens or camera rental. Definitely please support them because I want to do a lot more of these lens reviews. Today we're looking at Canon's brand new 16-35 2.8 version 3. This is a super important lens. If you're a wedding or event photographer, I consider this to be probably the third most important lens you can have in your camera bag. As a wedding photographer, somebody who's shot many events, I believe the three lenses you need to have are something in the 24-70 or 24-105 as your first lens. Second lens should probably be something in the 70-200. I like the 2.8 version 2 image stabilized. And at that point, you really need to get some type of wide angle. Canon has many different wide angle L zoom lenses. There's the 11-24 f4. There's a 16-35 f4. We have the version 2 that's been around for 9 years now at the time of this recording. This has been a workhorse, but it had some limits and it was definitely in need of an upgrade. So at the time of this recording, the new version 3 is $2,200. That's pretty expensive compared to a brand new version 2 you can find for about $1,450. That's $750 difference between the two. If you look on eBay, you can find these for $1,100 pretty much all day long. $1,100 versus $2,200. Is it worth twice the cost of getting the older used version 2 if you were looking for a good wide angle zoom? Now, as a side note, I have to kind of stick with these 16-35s simply because I do a lot of landscape shooting and I'm screwing filter threads into the barrels to support different lens filters while I'm shooting. So I can't use that 11-24. I prefer having a trinity of 2.8s instead of the f4. The f4 version of the 16-35 is a great value, but this is a super important lens for me. And so the question becomes, what are we getting for the extra money? And really, which kinds of photographers would be interested in this lens? Does it have any weaknesses? It does. I have some good news and bad news, and I'll lay them out to you, starting with the good news. Spec-wise, real quick, I did want to point out that it is bigger. It's heavier, about 150 grams heavier. This is the version 2. That I compared a lot of it with. A little over a centimeter taller. It's girthier, so it's more beefy around the lens barrel itself. It kind of reminds me of the 24-70 2.8 version 2, a little bit bigger than that. But the good news about this lens is, number one, right off the bat compared to the version 2, is it is much sharper from the center and especially in the corners from 16-35, from 2.8 to f8, across the board. This is a sharper lens and you're going to notice it immediately. Not only did I see this in my test shots on the brick wall, but just out and about shooting, it's the first thing that just jumps off the image is, wow, this is a really sharp lens. So that's the first thing. Huge improvement, Canon. Great job on that. The second thing that is really important, at least to me, about this lens is it has some new lens coatings. And so when I'm shooting into the sun for sunset shooting, I get a lot of lens flare. With this guy, it's something that I've always kind of struggled with, and I've kind of had to zoom in and out or change my field of view or my composition to try to work around that. And you can see the lens flaring on this pretty easy if you're looking for it. This, you have to really try to find it. It's there, but not nearly as much as the version 2. So that's another huge benefit of the version 3. Third thing that you're probably not going to notice unless you're looking for it is the shape of bokeh balls. Especially when you're shooting wide, it's kind of hard to see. We have 9 curved aperture blades versus 7 regular aperture blades. And so if you look really, really close at 3.5, you can see that the version 3 appears to be more round. So the more pleasing shape for those of you that are interested in that kind of thing. Point number 4 was these lenses are very similar in many ways. I did a lot of tests like chromatic aberration, pin cushioning, distortion, things of that nature, minimum focusing distance. For the most part, there are very subtle differences that you will not see unless you're physically shooting side by side. For example, chromatic aberration on the version 2, it's there if you look for it. A little bit harder to find on the version 3, but if you're shooting wide, it may not be something that really stands out. Something that I was interested in was whether or not there was as much distortion in the version 3 as there was in version 2. And something that was interesting that I found was as you get really close, if you're shooting within a foot of your subject, the version 3 sort of behaves more like 19 millimeters on the version 2. It's not a big deal unless you're some kind of a specialist that shoots really, really close objects with a wide angle lens. As you back up, it becomes less noticeable, very slight more pin cushioning in the version 3, not a huge deal. Which brings me to point number 5. And this is the weakness of the new version 3. There's a couple caveats to this. The vignetting is significantly worse at 2.8 than the version 2. So let's talk about some of these caveats. If you are shooting with this lens on a non-Canon body at 2.8, the vignetting is going to stand out. If you're shooting at 16 millimeters, 2.8, not good. As you stop down to f4 and f8, that vignetting goes away. So that's the first side note. Okay, so if you stop down, you're going to be okay. The second side note is, if you do not have the peripheral illumination correction data on your camera, let's say you're shooting with a 5D Mark III or a 6D or a 5D Mark II, you're going to see this in your JPEGs, you're going to see it in your videos, you are going to see it even in live view. And in some cases, you're going to be able to clean it up if you're shooting RAW, if you're okay cleaning up JPEGs, things of that nature. Harder to clean up in video. But the good news is it's very easy to upgrade the lens data to your camera body. I'll make a little side video on how to do this. It's pretty straightforward and easy. Once you have that software on your camera, this becomes close to as good of a perfect wide angle zoom that you can get for your Canon camera. It is really impressive. So I'll include some pictures that I took down by the beach so you guys can see for yourself. The sharpness is outstanding. The vignetting can be corrected in camera or in post, depending on how you're shooting. I wouldn't recommend shooting wide with this on, let's say, a Sony body if you're adapting because of the vignetting. That's going to be a problem. But if you are an event photographer, a wedding photographer, somebody who's a paid professional that's shooting 3 or 4 times a month that you need a wide-angle lens, this is going to be a really wise investment. I think it's a winner. I think it's a home run winner. And that's just my thought on it. Just one man's opinion. Is it worth twice as much as the version 2 used on eBay? That's a question I can't really answer. Oh, and by the way, they're both 82mm filter threads. So if you have filter sets for this, they're going to work on the new guy. If you are a casual shooter and you're just getting into photography and you want a good zoom, I think the version 2 still holds a lot of value. But again, professional shooters, this is it. This is the lens you're going to want. Highly recommended. Update your firmware and you have a winner. In any event, I want to say thanks again to LensPro2Go. Please support them, guys, because they are going to help us do a lot more of these reviews. And if you use that coupon Maven10 when you check out, it knows that you heard about them from me. Please let me know in the comments below which lens test you want me to do next. I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you found this video helpful, you might be interested in one of my many courses on Canon DSLRs as well as advanced techniques. They're available worldwide by download, and they come with a 100% money-back guarantee. You can order them from the following link.